Dear students, now we shall study the concept of tort, the foundations of tortious liability, and the defenses to an action on tort. Normally, we can say a man has a right to swing his walking stick at any length as he feels like, but not to touch the other man's nose. If you are going to touch his nose, you are infringing his right. This is actually, we can call it as a tort. But in a legal parlance, we have to define what is a tort. A tort is an act or omission which violates other man's right, which gives us a cause of action for unliquidated damages. First of all, you must know what is a damage and what is damages. Suppose I pull your collar and your shirt torn, naturally it is a resultant damage to your shirt. So like if I give a punch in your face and profusely bleeding in your nose, there is a damage to your body. Now you see, instead of going to a police officer, if you just file a suit in a civil court under law of torts, the court will award compensation for the injury that has been done to you. This compensation by the court of law is called damages. So what you understand is, in the law of tort, an act or omission which gives us a cause of action for unliquidated damages. You must know what is unliquidated damages. You see, in a law of contract, if I agree to supply 10 bags of paddy at the rate of 300 rupees per bag on a particular day, naturally it is my bounded duty to deliver the goods to you on the particular day, and it is your duty to pay for the same. This is an agreement. Suppose if I don't deliver the goods to you on the particular day as assigned, naturally you have no other option but to get the goods in the open market. Probably on the particular day, the bag of paddy might be about 350 rupees. Here you see, you have incurred a loss of 50 rupees per bag, thereby totally you have incurred about 500 rupees. Here you see, you are able to ascertain in terms of money the damage in this particular breach of agreement. You are able to ascertain in terms of rupee, wherein you can go to a court of law and file a suit to recover 500 rupees by way of damages. As far as a tort is concerned, suppose I give a punch at your face, naturally you want to go to a court of law to file a suit to recover damages. You are not able to ascertain in terms of money for the punch that I give it to you. Here you see, the court takes all the circumstances into consideration and it passes the compensation, what you call the damages. That's what we say, the damages are unliquidated with respect to a tort. The court will be the best judge to decide on the issue. As I told you, in act or omission, in this context you must understand what is a omission. What you mean is, it is a wrong, a resultant wrong by way of an act or your omission. Here you must understand one thing, when I say wrong, it is not every wrong actionable under law of tort. We normally classify wrong as a moral wrong or a legal wrong. As far as a moral wrong is concerned, you cannot go to a court of law to file a suit and to recover compensation. For example, I think ill of another person, Nasama Poga. Here you see, you can't go to a court of law to file a suit against me if I just think of within myself, because this is only a moral wrong. I should not think ill of another person. Suppose if I shout in front of others, naturally it may give us a cause of action to claim account. So from this what to understand is, a moral wrong will not give rise to a cause of action in a court of law. So here what you understand is only a legal wrong will give rise to a cause of action to file a suit in a court of law. Now you must understand, as I told you, there are some foundations for tortious liability. I have said that act or omission should have violated the other man's right. Such act or omission should have resulted in the legal wrong. Simultaneously, such act or omission should have resulted in the legal damage. In this context, we should know two Latin maxims. The first is damnum sine injuria, that is, damage without affecting the other man's right. For example, you keep a cycle shop. You are giving out for hire at the rate of 1 rupee per hour. Suppose I also start a shop just opposite your shop after taking all the formalities from the municipality. I am giving out at the hire at the rate of 50 paise per hour. Naturally, your business is ruined. Till yesterday, the customers were coming to you, but from today, your business is lost and I am gaining momentum out of it. Here you see, there is a damage to your business, but actually, I have not violated your right. So what I say is, damage without inflicting injury, that is without violation of a legal right, will not give rise to a cause of action to file a suit in a court of law to claim compensation. So like here, you cannot go to a court of law to seek damages from me. Secondly, injuria sine damno, wherein there is a violation of legal right, but there is no resultant damage. For example, I want to exercise my franchise in favor of a particular candidate. I go to a police station to exercise my franchise. Unfortunately, the presiding officer is preventing me from exercising my franchise in favor of my particular candidate. Here you see, it so happened the candidate on whom I want to exercise franchise has won the election with thumping majority. However, my right to exercise franchise on a particular candidate is violated by the presiding officer. He has prevented me from exercising my vote. Thereby, my right is violated, though there is no resultant damage. Actually, my candidate won the election with thumping majority. So what I want is, injuria sine damno will result in an action for damages under law of torts. Here I can as well go to a court of law. I can file a suit against the presiding officer for preventing me from exercising my franchise. So from this what to understand is, injuria sine damno will give rise to a cause of action to file a suit under law of tort. So from this what we understand is, a tort is an act or omission which violates the other man's right, which gives rise to a cause of action in a court of law. At this juncture you must understand, there is no codified act of torts under law of torts, unlike in a criminal law. In criminal law, you come across various statutes wherein offence against body, offence against state, offence against property, so on and so forth. As far as tort is concerned, the law is not codified. From this what we understand is, stare the other man's window, even without any lawful excuse, certainly it's a tort. I can't say that it's a public way where I just stand, I just stare at the other man's window. You see, if I stare at the other man's window, I am affecting his right for privacy. So from this what to understand is, any act which can be construed as violating the other man's right will give rise to cause of action under law of tort. Now, we shall go to the defences available to an action on tort. As I told you, under law of crime, defences are enumerated in the statute itself. For example, in the Indian Penal Code, you come across various defenses like self-defense, involuntary intoxication, so on and so forth. As far as tort is concerned, as I told you, there is no separate statute by itself. However, the courts have taken the situation into consideration and they have enumerated certain category of defenses available to a person with respect to tort. Here academically, we can call out certain important defenses available. For example, firstly we can say parental and quasi-parental authority. You see, I am a teacher. I expect every one of the students to sit in the classroom to listen to my lecture. If he is not attending to classes, I just throw a chalk piece at him. When the chalk piece touches his forehead, it is nothing but tort of battery. I have committed a tort of battery. But you see, if the student goes to court of law to file a suit against me to claim compensation, I can as well say, I am a teacher. I exercise quasi-parental authority. My intention is not to hurt him wantonly. I want to see that he is serious towards studies, he is seriously attending to classes. That is my intention. So like you take the example of a father. A father is exercising a parental authority over the child. Suppose the son is not going to the classes regularly. Naturally, it irritates him. He may even give a slap over the son. Can the son go to a court of law to file a suit against a father to claim compensation law of tort? Certainly not. Because he is a father, he wants to see that his son comes up well in the examination, thereby he comes up well in the career. His attention is drawn to his education. Naturally, in this context, I can say the son cannot file a suit against the father because the father is exercising a parental authority over the child. So from this what to understand is, there are certain relationships wherein you can exercise the parental and quasi-parental authority. Thereby, you can defend yourself with respect to a suit under tort. Secondly, we can say necessity as a defense. What is necessity is a question of fact to be taken in circumstances. For example, I am the owner of the house. My next friend, my neighbor, has gone to the native place to celebrate the wedding of his daughter. At midnight, I saw flames coming out of the house from my neighbor's house. So I have no option. I have to enter the house to put out the fire. You see, I break open the door and I put out the fire. I throw water and thereby there is not much resultant damage to the property. But you see, I have entered his house without his knowledge, without his permission. Can be called as a trespasser? Certainly not. You see, I have acted as a man of ordinary prudence and circumstances out of necessity. I entered the house with the intention to put out the fire. So naturally, if my neighbor files a suit against me under law of tort, I can as well defend myself to say that, yes, I entered a house without a permission. I should not be called as a trespasser because out of necessity I have no other option. Unless I put out the fire, even my house is also will be at stake. So naturally, this is a defense like that. But one thing you must understand, after entering the house, after putting out the fire, if I do any act which is not relevant to the concerned situation, then I may be called as continuing trespasser after putting out the fire. I just come out where I saw a budding flower, a rose flower. With the intention to pluck the flower, I touch it. My intention is to pluck the flower and give to my granddaughter. Actually, when I enter the premises, I should not be considered to be a trespasser because out of necessity, I enter the premises to put out the fire. But here you see, I touch the flower with the intention to pluck the flower. Here, I am doing an act considered to be trespass. So like a ship is sailing on the high seas. Suppose there is a damage to the ship. The ship's captain has no other alternative, has to throw overboard all the articles on the ship. So during the course of interaction with the passengers on board, he is plucking the articles and is throwing overboard. Here you see, if any passenger is not prepared to depart his articles, he can even inflict some force over the passenger and he can as well throw the articles overboard. His intention is to safeguard the interest of all the passengers on the boat. Here is, he would have exercised some force on the passenger that may tantamount to an act of tort, probably even battery. But here you see, if such passenger file a suit against the captain, he can as well say, yes, I did the act. I do accept it as a battery under law of torts. But you see, my interest is not to harm the passenger. My interest is only to safeguard all the passengers on the boat. So likewise you see, under law of tort, necessity is always taken into consideration as a defense available to a person when he has committed a tort. Likewise you see, voluntary non-fit injuria is considered to be another defense. What is that? It means voluntarily submission to an injury. Suppose I am a boxer, I can box well. I am at the boxing bout, I am going to box with a person. You see, as per the rule of the boxing, he is actually trying to punch in my face. Extra punch will get extra points for him so that he want to win. But you see, I should always keep the rules within the game. I am not supposed to hit below the abdomen. If I give a punch at his face, I am doing the act within the lawful game. Thereby, I can safeguard myself. Even he gets a very hard punch, he can't go to court of law. So like for example, I go to a cricket match. I go there to witness the cricket match. Suppose Sachin makes a sixer and the ball hits my face. Can I file a suit against him? Certainly not. You see, I know pretty well, I am a spectator. There is every possibility for a person to give a sixer, and naturally the sixer, the ball will come to the spectator's eyes also. I should be cautious. If it hits my face, I cannot go to court of law. But you must understand one thing, there should not be a violation of a statutory rule. For example, I go to a cricket match. Suppose the organizers, they have created the gallery with a bamboo sticks. And normally, they know pretty well, it can accommodate only about 25,000 spectators to watch the game. So naturally, they should sell tickets only up to the 20,000 mark. If they sell the ticket to 40,000 and they rush on the gallery, and the gallery gives way, thereby if I am injured, I have every right to file a suit against the organizers. They should not have sold the tickets more than 25,000. So from this what we understand is, voluntary submission to injuria is a defense available to a person in a court of law. Likewise you see, vis major, what you call the act of God, is also considered to be a defense. What does it mean? That is an act without human error occurred under natural calamity. Statutory authority is considered to be another defense. Suppose a thief is just running on the road and he enters into a dwelling house. The police officer enters the house even without taking permission from the house owner because he wants to catch hold of the criminal. He is exercising a statutory authority. Likewise, you see a postman. Postman's duty is to deliver letters to all of them. Suppose enter the house, sir, post, he delivers the letter. He enters the premises without taking permission. He opens the door and he delivers the letter. It is a statutory duty to deliver the letters. So from this what we understand is, statutory authority is considered to be another defense. So a police officer regulates the traffic. Stop the traffic. He does it because a VIP is going on the road. His duty to regulate the traffic. I cannot file a suit and say that I am a pedestrian, prevented me from walking the road. I can't say so, because the police officer is regulating the traffic. So what we understand is, statutory authority is considered to be another defense and law of tort. Likewise, you see, inevitable accident. What is inevitable accident? That is wherein a thing happens without human error. Suppose this is a Deepavali day. There are a lot of crackers going on. I just walk on the road, cracker falls on me, I just throw it. Probably it may fall on you. You may get hurt. You can file a suit. You can file a suit, but the thing is that I can as well take a defense. It is inevitable. My intention is not to throw the cracker at you. I have acted as a man of ordinary prudence and circumstances wherein it injures you. So from this, what to understand is, there are defenses available to a person when he has committed a tort, and this all considered to be general defenses. Apart from this, there are various specific defenses available with respect to specific category of torts like defamation, nervous shock, nuisance, negligence, so on and so forth. That we shall study with respect to the different category of torts. Thank you.